Nia Jackson stood in an Atlanta courtroom, wrists cuffed, blood trickling from a split lip, as Judge Victor Hargrove sneered from his bench, slamming his gavel with relish. Two white cops grinned behind her, their batons still warm from the beating. They'd given her outside a gas station for loitering. The jury, all pale faces, nodded like puppets. Hargrove's voice boomed, "Guilty," before Nia could speak. Then she smiled, a slow, dangerous curve. "You don't know who I am," she whispered. The room froze. What would her next move unleash? "Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. If you stand for justice-shattering corruption, hit that like button and subscribe for more explosive stories like this one." Nia Jackson's day had started like any other in Atlanta, the city's humid air clinging to her skin as she stepped out of a nondescript sedan near a gas station on Peachtree Road. She adjusted her earpiece, a discreet CIA comms device, muttering a status update to her team about a sting operation 2 counties over. The sun dipped low, painting the cracked pavement in shades of orange, and the station's neon sign flickered, buzzing like a dying insect. She didn't notice the patrol car lurking across the street, its headlights off, engine idling. Inside, Officers Dale Pruitt and Shane Carver watched her every move, their eyes narrowing at the sight of a black woman in a tailored blazer, standing too long near a pump. To them, she wasn't a professional. She was a target. Pruitt, a wiry man with a buzz cut and a permanent scowl, leaned over to Carver, his partner, a stocky brute with a sunburned neck and a habit of chewing tobacco. "Look at her, fiddling with something. Bet she's up to no." "Good," Pruitt said, his voice thick with contempt. Carver spat into a cup, nodding. "Yeah, doesn't belong here, let's shake her down." They didn't need a reason beyond the color of her skin, and in their minds that was plenty. The gas station was in a good part of town, meaning white, and Nia's presence was an affront to their unspoken rules. They flipped on their lights, tires crunching gravel as they rolled up, cutting off her path to the sedan. Nia barely had time to register the flashing red and blue before Pruitt was out, baton already in hand, barking, "Hands where I can see 'em." She froze, instincts kicking in, raising her palm slowly. "I'm just waiting for a colleague," she said, her tone even, professional, the kind she'd used to de-escalate a dozen covert ops. Carver smirked, circling her like a vulture, his boots scuffing the asphalt. "Sure you are, sweetheart. What's that in your ear? Dealing something?" He yanked the earpiece out, crushing it under his heel before she could protest. The comms went dead, her lifeline to the CIA severed in a crack of plastic. She clenched her jaw, memorizing his badge number, 4729. Pruitt grabbed her arm, twisting, it hard enough to bruise, and slammed her chest, first against the hood of their cruiser. The metal burned hot against her skin, still warm from the Georgia sun. "You people always got an excuse," he snarled, his breath sour with coffee and hate. Nia's cheek pressed into the hood, blood welling from a cut where her lip caught the edge. She didn't scream, didn't beg, just breathed slow, counting the seconds. Carver rummaged through her jacket, pulling out her wallet, then paused, a grin splitting his face. Well, what's this?" He slipped a small bag of cocaine from his own pocket, planting it in hers with a theatrical flourish. "Looks like we got a dealer here, Dale." Nia's eyes narrowed, catching the sleight of hand, but she said nothing. Not yet. She knew how this game worked, had seen it play out in reports she'd filed on dirty cops across the country. They cuffed her, the steel biting into her wrists, and shoved her into the back seat, laughing as they radioed it in. "Female suspect resisting possession," Pruitt lied into the mic, winking at Carver. The drive to the precinct was a blur of slurs and threats, their voices overlapping in a chorus of venom. "You're gonna rot where you belong," Carver said, glancing back at her in the rear view. "Ain't nobody coming for you." Nia stared out the window, the city lights smearing past, her mind already mapping their downfall. At the precinct, a squat brick building reeking of bleach and stale smoke. They hauled her into a holding room. The walls were stained yellow, the table bolted to the floor, and a single bulb buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. Pruitt uncuffed her just long enough to shove her into a chair, then leaned in close, his knuckles cracking as he flexed them. "You got a lawyer, huh? Let's see how fast they forget you." She straightened, voice calm despite the ache in her jaw. "I want my call." Carver snorted, ripping the phone cord from the wall and tossing it aside. "Oops, looks like it's broke. Guess you're stuck with us." They took turns taunting her, Pruitt pacing like a caged dog, Carver leaning against the wall, spitting tobacco juice into a corner. "Always the same story with your kind," Pruitt said, his lip curling. "Think you can talk your way out, but this ain't your turf." Nia's gaze flicked between them, cataloguing every word, every twitch. She'd faced worse, cartel bosses, rogue spies. But this was personal, a raw, petty hatred she'd known since childhood in Birmingham's roughest corners. She leaned back, crossing her arms, letting them think she was beaten. Inside, her pulse steadied, her training kicking in. They'd slipped up already, crushing her comms, planting evidence, amateurs. Hours ticked by, the room growing stuffier, the air thick with their arrogance. Then a knock rattled the door. A desk sergeant poked his head in, his mustache twitching. "Hargrove wants her in court now, says it's a priority." Pruitt grinned, clapping Carver on the shoulder. "Judge'll bury her quick, let's roll." They cuffed her again, tighter this time, and marched her out, past cells where other black faces stared through bars, silent witnesses to the routine. The courthouse loomed 5 blocks away, a hulking relic of white columns and stained glass, its grandeur a lie masking decades of rigged scales. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and old paper, the air conditioned to a chill that prickled Nia's skin. Judge Victor Hargrove sat high behind his bench, a 60-year-old relic with silver hair and a face carved from granite, his robes pristine but his soul rotten. He'd ruled Atlanta's legal system for 30 years, a kingpin in a kingdom of corruption. His rulings a rubber stamp for cops like Pruitt and Carver. His eyes, cold and grey, skimmed Nia as she was shoved to the defendant's table, then flicked to the jury box. 12 faces, all white, hand-picked from his loyal pool. Retired bankers, housewives from gated suburbs, a mechanic with a Confederate tattoo peeking from his sleeve. No chance of fairness here. Hargrove didn't waste time. "Case number 732. Possession and resisting arrest," he drawled, tapping a pen against his desk, the rhythm slow, deliberate, like a countdown to her doom. Pruitt and Carver stood at the back, arms folded, smirking as if they'd already won. The prosecutor, Paul Grayson, a wiry man with a buzzard's beak nose and a navy suit, strutted forward, laying out the charges with a practiced sneer. "This woman's a menace, Your Honor. Court red-handed, fought our officers. We can't let her kind run loose." Nia's public defender, a kid fresh out of law school named Jamal Evans, fumbled with his notes, sweat beading on his forehead. He wasn't ready for this. Nia leaned over, her voice a whisper cutting through his panic. "Don't fight yet, let them dig deeper." Jamal blinked, confused, but nodded. She sat back, her split lip stinging, watching Hargrove orchestrate the farce. He called Pruitt to the stand first. The cop swaggered up, swearing on a Bible he didn't believe in, and spun a tale of Nia lunging at him with wild eyes, the cocaine bag falling from her pocket. Carver backed it up, his tobacco-stained teeth flashing as he lied about her violent resistance. The jury lapped it up, heads bobbing like they'd rehearsed it. Hargrove didn't blink, just scribbled something, his lips twitching with satisfaction. Grayson played the doctored body cam footage, grainy images showing Nia reaching for something, her crushed earpiece edited out. The room hummed with murmurs, the jury's eyes hardening. Jamal stammered an objection, but Hargrove waved it off, his gavel cracking like a whip. "Overruled. I've heard enough." He leaned forward, staring down at Nia, his voice dripping with venom. "Oh, you've wasted this court's time. Guilty. 20 years, no parole." The cops whooped softly at the back, fists bumping. Bailiffs grabbed Nia's arms, dragging her toward the exit, her heels scraping the floor. She didn't resist, didn't flinch, even as Hargrove's gavel slammed again, sealing her fate. The courtroom blurred past, the jury's smug faces, Grayson's triumphant grin, the cops' laughter echoing in her ears. They thought they'd won, thought they'd crushed her. Fools. In the holding area, a dank cell with peeling paint, she waited until the guards turned away. Slipping a hand into her shoe, she pulled out a tiny burner phone, its screen glowing faintly. Her fingers moved fast, texting one word to her CIA team. Now. She tucked it back, leaning against the wall, blood still seeping from her lip. The trap was set, but Pruitt and Carver weren't done playing yet. The Atlanta courtroom buzzed with a sick energy as Nia Jackson stood at the defendant's table, her wrists raw from cuffs, her blazer torn where Officer Dale Pruitt had slammed her against the cruiser hours earlier. The air stank of wax polish and sweat, the ceiling fans whirring lazily above a sea of white faces. Judge Victor Hargrove loomed on his bench, his silver hair glinting under fluorescent lights, his gray eyes locked on Nia with a predator's glee. This wasn't a trial. It was a lynching dressed up in legal robes, and everyone in the room knew it. The jury, 12 hand-picked bigots, sat stiff in their box, their stares dripping with disdain. A retired banker adjusted his tie, a housewife clutched her purse, a mechanic flexed his arm, the Confederate ink on his skin winking at Nia like a promise. Hargrove banged his gavel, the sound sharp, cutting through the murmurs. "Order, let's get this over with," he said, his voice a low growl, thick with southern drawl. He didn't care about procedure, didn't need to. This was his kingdom, and Nia was the prey he'd been itching to gut. Officers Pruitt and Shane Carver lounged at the back, their uniforms crisp, despite the blood still flecking Carver's baton from Nia's beating. They grinned, whispering to each other, their confidence unshaken. The prosecutor, Paul Grayson, strutted to the center, his navy suit pristine, his buzzard-like nose twitching as he sniffed victory. He tossed a stack of papers onto the evidence table, turning to the jury with a smirk. "This woman's a plague on our city, caught with drugs, attacked our brave officers. She's everything wrong with Atlanta." Nia's public defender, Jamal, Evans, barely 25, fumbled with a yellow legal pad, his tie crooked, his hands trembling. He'd been assigned 10 minutes before the trial, a sacrificial lamb in Hargrove's circus. Nia leaned close, her voice a whisper slicing through his nerves. "Don't fight yet, let them dig deeper." Jamal's brow furrowed, his brown eyes darting to her, but he nodded, trusting her calm despite the storm brewing. She sat back, her split lip throbbing, her mind racing. She'd sent the signal, "Now," from her burner phone. Her CIA team was out there, gears turning, but she needed Hargrove to overplay his hand. And he would. He always did. Grayson called Pruitt to the stand first. The cop swaggered up, his buzz cut gleaming, his thin lips curling as he swore on the Bible. "She was loitering, acting shifty," he lied, his voice steady, rehearsed. "When we approached, she lunged at me wild like she was high. That's when the coke fell out her pocket." The jury leaned in, eating it up, their heads bobbing in sync. Carver went next, spitting tobacco juice into a cup he'd snuck in, his sunburned neck flushed as he backed Pruitt's story. "She swung at me, too. Took both of us to wrestle her down. Dangerous type, no respect for the law." His grin widened, daring Nia to contradict him. She didn't. Not yet. Her eyes flicked to Hargrove, catching the twitch in his jaw, the satisfaction in his stare. Grayson played the ace up his sleeve, doctored body cam footage. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy images of Nia outside the gas station. Her hand moved to her ear, adjusting her crushed comms, but the edit cut there, making it look like she was reaching for a weapon. The next frame jumped to her lunging, a clumsy splice of her stumbling as Pruitt shoved her. Gasps rippled through the jury, the banker muttering, "Typical," the housewife clutching her pearls. Jamal shot to his feet, voice cracking. "Objection, Your Honor, that footage is manipulated." Hargrove's gavel crashed down, silencing him. "Overruled. Sit down, boy, or I'll hold you in contempt." Jamal sank back, face flushed, while Grayson smirked, turning to the jury. "You see it yourselves. She's guilty as sin." The room tilted against Nia, the air growing heavier, the walls seeming to close in. Grayson paced, his polished shoes clicking, building his case like a preacher at a revival. "This isn't just about one woman. It's about keeping our streets safe from her kind. Drug dealers, thugs, leeching off good folks. She fought our officers, resisted justice. We've got witnesses, evidence, her own actions on tape. What more do you need? The jury nodded, their minds made up before the trial began. Hargrove leaned forward, his pen scratching notes, his lips curling into a faint smile. He didn't need to hear more, but he let Grayson ramble, savoring the performance. Nia watched it all, her pulse steady, her face a mask. She'd seen this script before, Birmingham 92. Her cousin railroaded for a joint he never smoked. DC 05, a friend framed by a cop with a grudge. This was bigger, though. Hargrove wasn't just a racist judge. He was a kingpin, and Pruitt and Carver were his knights, enforcing a system built to crush people like her. She flexed her fingers, the cuffs sting a dull ache, and waited. Her team was close. She could feel it, but she needed the trap to snap shut at the perfect moment. Hargrove's arrogance would be his noose. Grayson wrapped up, his voice rising to a crescendo. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the proof. She's a menace, a liar, a threat to everything we hold dear. Give her what she deserves. He sat smoothing his tie, his smirk a blade aimed at Nia. Hargrove cleared his throat, adjusting his robes, his gaze finally settling on her. Defense. Anything to say? Jamal opened his mouth, but Nia touched his arm, stopping him. She stood, slow and deliberate, her voice cutting through the room like a shard of glass. You're building a house of cards, Your Honor. It's gonna fall. Hargrove's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his face. But he laughed, low and cruel. Bold words for a convict, save it for prison. The jury didn't deliberate long, 10 minutes tops. They filed back in, the foreman, a squat man with a receding hairline, reading the verdict with relish. Guilty on all counts. Pruitt and Carver fist-bumped at the back, their laughter a jagged edge in the air. Hargrove leaned forward, his gavel poised like a guillotine. Nia Jackson, I sentence you to 20 years in state prison, no parole. Maybe you'll learn some respect there. The room erupted in murmurs, the jury beaming, Grayson clapping Pruitt on the back. Bailiffs grabbed Nia's arms, their grip bruising, dragging her toward the holding cell door. Her heels scraped the hardwood, her blazer catching on a splintered edge, but she didn't struggle. Hargrove banged his gavel one last time, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Court's adjourned. Get her out of my sight. The bailiffs hauled her through a side exit, the courtroom fading behind her. Grayson's smug grin, the jury's cold stares, Pruitt and Carver's triumphant whoops. They thought they'd buried her, thought this was the end. In the holding cell, a concrete box with a flickering bulb, Nia slumped against the wall, her breath steady despite the blood crusting her lip. The burner phone was still tucked in her. Shoo, its single message sent. Now. Her team was moving, but the cops weren't done. She could hear their boots in the hall, their voices low, plotting. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. What do you think about a judge like Hargrove rigging the system so blatantly? Drop a comment with number 1 if you think he deserves to crash and burn for this, then smash that like button. And subscribe to see his empire crumble. How far would you go if you were Nia, framed and facing 20 years? Picture yourself in her shoes. Would you fight silent like her or scream the truth? Hit that subscribe bell so you don't miss her. Next move. Now here's the real question. What's waiting for Nia behind those cell bars that could turn this whole game upside down? The convoy rolled out of Atlanta's courthouse under a sky bruised with dusk, the air thick with exhaust and the faint hum of cicadas. Nia Jackson sat in the back of a prison van, her wrists cuffed to a metal bar, the steel cold against her. Bruised skin. Blood crusted her lip from the gas station beating, and her blazer hung in tatters, but her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the 2 guards up front. One chewed gum, his jaw popping rhythmically. The other stared ahead, fingers drumming. The wheel. They didn't speak, didn't need to. Their silence screamed orders, and Nia knew who'd sent them. Judge Victor Hargrove. Her burner phone text, now, had reached her CIA team, but time was a blade at her throat. The van lurched onto a back road, tires crunching gravel, the city's glow fading behind a wall of pines. Nia flexed her fingers, testing the cuffs, her mind racing. Hargrove wouldn't let her reach the state prison alive, not with her whispered threat still echoing in his courtroom. You don't know who I am. He'd rigged the trial, sure, but this was different. This was panic, sloppy and desperate, and she'd use it. Her earpiece was gone, crushed by Officer Shane Carver, but she wasn't defenseless. Tucked in her hair, a thin hairpin gleamed, a relic from a mission in Bogota. She worked it free, slow and silent, her breath steady despite the ache in her ribs. The van slowed, pulling into an abandoned way station, its rusted scales tilting in the weeds. The guards exchanged a glance, then stepped out, their boots thudding on the ground. Nia tensed, the hairpin poised between her fingers. The back doors swung open and two figures loomed, Pruitt and Carver disguised in orange jumpsuits, their badges swapped for shivs. Pruitt's buzz cut glistened with sweat, his scowl tighter than ever. Carver's sunburned neck twitched as he gripped a blade, his tobacco-stained grin gone feral. "Hargrove says hi," Pruitt snarled, lunging first. The shiv slashed toward her throat, a glint of steel in the dim light. Nia twisted, the cuffs clanking, and jammed the hairpin into Pruitt's wrist. He yelped, the blade clattering to the floor, blood spurting as he stumbled back. Carver roared, charging her, his shiv aimed at her gut. She kicked out, her heel cracking his knee, then yanked the hairpin free, stabbing it into his hand. He howled, dropping the weapon, but swung a fist, catching her ribs. Pain exploded through her side, hot and jagged, and she felt the wet snap of a blade sinking in, an inch deep just below her lung. Blood soaked her shirt, warm and sticky, but she gritted her teeth, slamming her elbow into Carver's jaw. He crumpled, dazed as Pruitt recovered, tackling her against the van's wall. The metal groaned under their weight, her vision blurring as Pruitt's hands closed around her throat. "You're done, bitch," he hissed, his breath rancid, his fingers squeezing. Nia clawed at his face, nails raking his cheek, then drove the hairpin into his ear. He screamed, staggering off, blood streaming down his neck. She gasped, sucking air, her side pulsing with every breath. The guards shouted. Outside, sirens wailing in the distance. Her team maybe, but too far. Carver lunged again, shiv back in hand, slicing her arm as she dodged. She grabbed his wrist, twisting until it snapped, his scream echoing as he fell. Pruitt scrambled for his blade, but Nia kicked it away, collapsing against the bench, blood pooling beneath her. The van rocked as the guards piled in, guns drawn, yelling, "She's escaping!" They hauled her out, her legs buckling, and tossed her into a holding cell at the way station, a concrete box with bars rusted red, the floor slick with grime. She hit the ground hard, her wounded ribs screaming, her arm leaking crimson onto the cement. The door slammed shut, the lock clicking with finality. Pruitt and Carver limped off, clutching their injuries, muttering curses as the guards radioed Hargrove. Nia curled against the wall, her breath shallow, her shirt clinging to the gash. She'd survived, barely, but the fight had drained her. Her hairpin was gone, lost in the scuffle, and her team's sirens faded, blocked maybe, or misdirected. Footsteps echoed outside, heavy and deliberate. The cell door creaked open, and Hargrove stepped in, his pristine robes swapped for a black suit, his silver hair stark against the gloom. He towered over her, his grey eyes glinting with malice, a king inspecting a fallen pawn. "Thought you'd slip away, huh?" he said, his voice low, venomous. "No one'll miss you, just another thug off the streets." He crouched, close enough for her to smell his cologne, sandalwood and power, his lips curling into a sneer. "Your little stunt in court? Over. You're nothing now." Nia coughed, blood flecking her lips, and forced a laugh, sharp and defiant. "Check my file, fool." Hargrove's smirk faltered, his brow creasing. He stood, snapping his fingers at a guard hovering in the doorway. "Get me her records, now." The guard, a lanky kid with a buzz cut, scurried off, returning minutes later with a thin dossier, its edges curled from haste. Hargrove snatched it, flipping it open, his eyes scanning the first page. His face drained of color, the paper trembling in his hands. "Central Intelligence Agency," he muttered, the words choking him. "Head of Internal Investigations." He looked down at Nia, sprawled in her own blood, her smile widening despite the pain. "You're bluffing," he spat, but his voice cracked, doubt seeping in. Nia tilted her head, her gaze piercing through the haze. "Am I?" she rasped, her laugh turning into a cough, blood bubbling at her lips. Hargrove's jaw tightened, his mind racing. She wasn't just some random arrest. She was a federal ghost, a woman who toppled cartels and senators, now bleeding out in his trap. He crumpled the dossier, tossing it into a corner, his sneer returning, harder, colder. "Doesn't matter. You won't live to tell it." He turned to the guard. "Finish her. Make it quick." The kid hesitated, eyes darting to Nia, then nodded, pulling a pistol from his belt. Hargrove stepped out, his shoes clicking on the concrete, leaving her to die. The guard raised the gun, his hand shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. Nia stared him down, her voice a whisper through the pain. "You pull that trigger, you're next." He froze, the barrel wavering, then lowered it, muttering, "Shit, I didn't sign up for this." He bolted, the door slamming behind him. Nia slumped back, her breath ragged, the gash in her ribs pulsing with every heartbeat. She'd bought time, maybe minutes, but Hargrove wasn't done. He'd seen the file, knew who she was, and still chose war. The sirens were gone now, the night silent except for the drip of her blood on the floor. Her team was out there, but she was alone, cornered and bleeding out. Hargrove's next move would be worse. She could feel it in her bones. Nia Jackson lay slumped against the cold concrete wall of the way station cell, blood pooling beneath her from the shiv wound in her ribs. The air reeked of rust and mildew, the flickering bulb overhead casting jagged shadows across her torn blazer. Her breath came in shallow gasps, each one a stab of fire through her chest, but her eyes stayed sharp, locked on the dossier Judge Victor Hargrove had just crumpled and tossed into the corner. Central Intelligence Agency, head of internal investigations. The truth he'd seen and refused to accept. He stood over her, his black suit pristine against the grime, his silver hair glinting like a crown. "You're a dead woman," he said, his voice a low hiss, his grey eyes burning with hate. "No file changes that." Hargrove snatched the dossier back up, his fingers trembling as he ripped it apart, the pages fluttering to the floor like ash. He turned to the lanky guard who'd balked at shooting Nia, his voice snapping like a whip. "Get Pruitt and Carver, we end this now." The guard nodded, bolting out, his boots echoing down the hall. Hargrove crouched again, close enough for Nia to smell his sandalwood cologne, his sneer twisting his granite face. "Your little CIA friends won't find you. By morning you're a suicide, another junkie who couldn't hack it." Nia coughed, blood flecking her lips, and met his gaze. "You're scared, Victor, I see it." His jaw clenched, but he stood, brushing off his suit, and stormed out, the cell door slamming shut. Minutes later, Officers Dale Pruitt and Shane Carver shuffled in, their orange jumpsuits swapped back for uniforms, their faces bruised from Nia's fight back. Pruitt's cheek bore her nail marks, a red slash under his buzz cut. Carver's hand was bandaged, his wrist swollen from her twist. They carried a toolbox, its metal clanking ominously. "Boss says you're done," Pruitt growled, popping the lid to reveal pliers, a gas canister, and a length of hose. Carver grinned, his tobacco-stained teeth flashing. "Gonna make it look real sad, overdose, gas leak, take your pick." Nia's pulse raced, her mind scrambling despite the pain. She'd survived their shivs, but this was colder, more calculated. Hargrove wanted her erased. No loose ends. Pruitt yanked her up by the arm, her ribs screaming as he shoved her against the bars. Carver rigged the hose to the canister, twisting the valve until a faint hiss filled the air. The smell hit Nia fast, sharp and chemical, her lungs burning as she coughed harder, blood dripping onto her shoes. "Breathe deep," Carver said, chuckling as he taped the hose near her face. Pruitt stepped back, watching her slump, his scowl softening into triumph. "Night-night, Princess." Nia's vision blurred, the room spinning, but her fingers brushed the floor, finding a frayed wire from the busted light socket. A spark. That's all she needed. She gripped it, her hands slick with sweat and blood, and waited. The gas thickened, her head pounding, her chest tightening like a vice. Pruitt turned to Carver, muttering, "Give it 5, then we drag her out." Nia's eyes fluttered, her body sagging, but her mind clung to the plan. She flicked the wire against the metal bar, a tiny spark flaring, then another. The third caught, a flash igniting the gas in a deafening boom. The wall exploded outward, concrete chunks flying, the blast throwing Pruitt and Carver against the bars. Nia rolled through the hole, her blazer singed, her ribs a furnace of agony. She hit the gravel outside, coughing blood and ash, the night air cold against her skin. The way station burned behind her, flames licking the sky, sirens wailing. Somewhere far off, she staggered to her feet, limping into Atlanta's underbelly, a maze of alleys and shuttered shops. Her legs shook, her arm bleeding anew, but she pushed on, ducking behind a dumpster as cop cars screeched past. Her burner. Phone was gone, lost in the blast, but her team knew her last location. They'd come, she just had to survive. She tore a strip from her blazer, tying it around her ribs, the pressure slowing the bleed. The city hummed around her, oblivious to the war she'd sparked. Then she saw it, her face on a newsstand TV, the headline blaring, "Cop killing fugitive. Hair escapes." Hargrove's voice crackled through, his granite face filling the screen. "Nia Jackson is a terrorist. Shoot on sight." Her stomach dropped. He'd flipped the script, turned her survival into a death sentence. Every cop, every vigilante in Atlanta would hunt her now. She limped deeper into the shadows, finding a rusted fire escape, climbing until she reached a rooftop. Her comms were dead, but she whispered into the night, "Come on, guys." Below, the city pulsed with rage, Hargrove's media puppets spinning lies. She sank against a vent, her breath ragged when her earpiece crackled. Static, then a voice. "Nia, we're blocked. Feds are compromised." Her team was out there, but someone had cut them off. Hargrove's reach was deeper than she'd thought. She scanned the skyline, the city lights smearing into a haze. Her ribs throbbed, her arm hung limp, but her mind raced. The explosion had bought her freedom, but Hargrove had countered fast, painting her as a monster. She was alone, hunted, a ghost in a city turned against her. Pruitt and Carver would recover, Hargrove would regroup, and the next strike would be worse. She clenched her fists, blood seeping through her makeshift bandage. He thought he'd won, thought he'd buried her. But she'd seen his fear, felt it in his trembling hands. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Can you believe Hargrove's nerve, framing Nia as a terrorist after trying to gas her out? Drop a comment with number 1. If you think this judge needs to face the fire he's lit, then hit that like button and subscribe to watch his lies unravel. What would you do if the whole city turned on you for fighting back? Imagine being Nia, bleeding, alone with no one to trust. Would you run or strike? Smash that subscribe bell for the next twist. Now picture this. What's lurking in Atlanta's shadows that could make Nia's escape a trap she never saw coming? Nia Jackson crouched on the rooftop, her breath shallow. The Atlanta skyline sprawling beneath her like a jagged wound under the moon's pale glow. Blood seeped through the blazer strip tied around her ribs, the shiv wound pulsing with every heartbeat, while her grazed arm throbbed from the way station escape. The city's humid air clung to her skin, thick with the scent of asphalt and distant smoke. Below, sirens wailed, a relentless chorus cutting through the night as Judge Victor Hargrove's manhunt turned Atlanta into a war zone. Her face flashed on every screen, every corner newsstand, branded a cop-killing terrorist. Hargrove's voice boomed from a TV bolted to a pawnshop wall, his granite face twisted with fury. "Nia Jackson is armed and dangerous. $50,000 to the patriot who brings her down." The streets churned with hostility. Cop cars prowled, their lights painting the alleys red and blue, while Hargrove's bounty ignited a darker force. Racist vigilantes spilled out, pickup trucks roaring through black neighborhoods, their Confederate flags snapping in the wind. Nia watched from above as a mob torched a barber shop on Auburn Avenue, flames licking the sky, glass shattering under. Baseball bats. "Flush her out," a man bellowed, his voice raw with hate, shotgun raised. They didn't care who got hurt, didn't care about truth. To them, she was every stereotype they'd been taught to fear, and Hargrove had lit the match. Her ribs ached, but her mind stayed sharp. She needed shelter, needed time. She slid down a drainpipe, her boots scraping rust, landing in a narrow alley behind the burning shop. The heat stung her face, smoke curling into her lungs, but she pushed forward, limping toward a flickering neon sign. Joe's Cuts. The door hung ajar, the owner, a wiry black man with graying hair, peering out, his eyes wide with panic. "Get in," he whispered, waving her inside. Nia slipped through, the door slamming shut behind her, the roar of the mob muffled by brick walls. The shop smelled of pomade and leather. Its mirrors cracked, chairs toppled from looters. "Name's Joe," he said, locking the bolt. "Saw you on the news, ain't right what they're doing." Nia nodded, collapsing into a chair, her breath ragged. "Thanks, Joe, just need a minute." He handed her a towel, his hands shaking, and she pressed it to her ribs, wincing as blood soaked the cloth. "They're burning everything," he muttered, peering through a slit in the boarded window. "Say you killed cops, that true?" She met his gaze, her voice steady despite the pain. "No, they framed me. I'm fighting back." Joe nodded, pulling a first aid kit from under the counter. He stitched her wound with trembling fingers, the needle biting her skin, but she didn't flinch, her eyes scanning the room for exits. The stitches held, the bleeding slowed, and Nia stood, testing her weight. "Gotta move," she said, but Joe pointed to a trapdoor behind the counter. "Basement, hide there, they're close." She hesitated, then nodded, slipping down the wooden steps into a damp, dark space lined with shelves of old razors and canned goods. The trapdoor clicked shut above her, Joe's footsteps fading as he returned to the shop. She leaned against a wall, her grazed leg stiffening, and pulled a shard of glass from her pocket. A makeshift weapon from the alley. Her comms crackled faintly, static hissing. "Nia, we're pinned. Hargrove's got the roads locked." Her team was out there, but she was a ghost now, cut off. Minutes ticked by, the basement air growing stale, when shouts erupted above. Boots stomped, glass crunched, and Joe's voice rose, sharp with defiance. "Ain't nobody here." A thud followed, Joe groaning as he hit the floor. Nia tensed, gripping the glass shard, her pulse pounding in her ears. The trapdoor flew open, and Officer Shane Carver's sunburned face glared down, his bandage-wrapped hand clutching a pistol. "Found you," he sneered, descending the steps, his boots thudding like hammer blows. Pruitt followed, his cheek still raw from her nails, his buzz cut slick with sweat. "Hargrove said no loose ends," he growled, drawing his baton. Nia lunged, slashing Carver's arm with the glass, blood spraying as he cursed, dropping the gun. She kicked it away, but Pruitt swung, the baton cracking her shoulder, pain exploding through her arm. She stumbled, catching herself on a shelf, cans clattering to the floor. Carver recovered, tackling her, his weight pinning her against the wall. "You're dead," he spat, his good hand clawing for her throat. She drove the glass into his thigh, twisting it deep, his scream echoing as he fell. Pruitt charged, baton raised, but she dodged, grabbing a rusted pipe from the floor. She swung, catching his jaw, bone crunching as he crumpled, blood pooling from his mouth. She staggered up the steps, her shoulder screaming, her leg grazed by a stray bullet Carver had fired into the chaos above. Joe lay sprawled near the counter, his lips split, his eyes fluttering. "Go," he rasped, pointing to the back door. Nia nodded, limping out into the alley, the mob's roar louder now, flames painting the night orange. She ducked behind a dumpster, her comms crackling again. "Nia, send proof!" Her team's voice cut through. She pulled a tiny recorder from her shoe, a backup she'd kept since the gas station, and pressed play, whispering, "Hargrove's burning the city, get this out." She hit send, the file beaming to her team's secure line, then tossed the device into the shadows. The alley blurred as she ran, her leg dragging, blood seeping from the graze. Above, Hargrove's face flickered on a billboard, his voice booming, through a news chopper's feed. "She's finished, Atlanta's ours." His grin was a knife in her gut, his confidence unshaken despite her escape. Cop cars screeched around corners, vigilantes howled, their shotguns blasting into the night. Nia slipped into a storm drain, the water cold against her ankles, her breath fogging in the dark. She'd survived again, sent the proof, but Hargrove's machine was roaring louder. He'd turn her evidence into noise, drown it in chaos. She clenched her fists, the pipe still in her hand, her body a map of pain. This wasn't over, and the next fight would be bloodier. Nia Jackson stumbled through Atlanta's storm drain, the icy water sloshing around her ankles, her grazed leg burning with every step. Blood oozed from her ribs where the shiv had pierced her, the makeshift bandage soaked through, while her shoulder throbbed from Officer Dale Pruitt's baton blow in the barbershop basement. The rusted pipe she'd used to crack his jaw dangled in her hand, slick with his blood, a grim trophy of survival. Above, the city roared with chaos, sirens wailing, vigilante trucks roaring past, their Confederate flags flapping like war banners. Judge Victor Hargrove's manhunt had turned Atlanta into a furnace of hate, and Nia was the spark he couldn't snuff out. Her recorder's proof was out, sent to her CIA team, but the static in her dead comms told her she was still alone. The drain opened into a littered alley, the air thick with smoke from torched shops, the distant crack of gunfire echoing off. Brick walls. Nia's breath fogged in the night, her body screaming for rest, but she pushed on, her boots crunching broken glass. She needed shelter, a lifeline. A shadow moved ahead, tall and broad, stepping from behind a dumpster. "You, Nia?" A deep voice called, steady but urgent. She froze, pipe raised, her pulse hammering. The man stepped into the moonlight, a black activist in his 30s, his dreadlocks tied back, his jacket patched with protest pins. "Marcus Tate," he said, hands up. "I run Freedom Watch. Saw your face on the news. You need help." Nia lowered the pipe, her eyes scanning him, wary but desperate. "You armed?" she rasped, her voice rough from smoke and pain. Marcus shook his head, lifting his jacket to show empty pockets. "Just here to get you off the street. Hargrove's got this city locked down." She nodded, limping toward him, her leg dragging. He led her through a maze of back streets, past burning cars and shattered windows, to a boarded-up warehouse on the edge of Vine City. The door creaked open, revealing a dim room with a cot, a sink, and a laptop glowing on a bee. "Crate. Safe house," Marcus said, locking the bolt. "Rest here." She collapsed onto the cot, her ribs a furnace of agony, blood seeping onto the thin mattress. Marcus knelt beside her, his hands steady as he pulled a medkit from a shelf. "You're a mess," he muttered, cleaning her wounds with alcohol, the sting sharp against her skin. She gritted her teeth, watching him stitch her leg, his fingers quick and practiced. "Why help me?" she asked, her voice low, probing. He met her gaze, his brown eyes fierce. "Hargrove's been screwing us for years. Cops too. You're fighting back. That's enough." Nia exhaled, tension easing. She needed an ally, and Marcus felt real. He finished the stitches, wrapping her ribs in fresh gauze, then handed her a bottle of water. "Drink, then talk." She gulped it down, the cold soothing her parched throat, and leaned back, her mind clearing. "I'm CIA," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "Head of Internal Investigations. They framed me at that gas station, planted drugs, rigged the trial. I've got proof out there now." Marcus's eyes widened, then narrowed with resolve. "That recorder thing? Saw it trending. Pruitt planting the coke. People are pissed." He grabbed the laptop, pulling up a live feed. Protests flared across Atlanta, crowds chanting her name, signs reading "Justice for Nia." She nodded, a flicker of hope sparking. "I need that video everywhere. Can you leak it wider?" Marcus grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Already. On it. My network's got reach. We'll blast it global." He typed fast, uploading the file to encrypted sites, his fingers flying over the keys. Nia watched, her breath steadying, the pain dulling under his care. For the first time in hours, she felt a sliver of control. Marcus plugged in a charger, the laptop humming, and turned to her. "Rest now, I'll keep watch." She closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her under, trusting him to hold the line. Hours passed, the warehouse quiet except for the laptop's faint buzz. Nia woke to sirens screaming closer, her instincts kicking in. She sat up, ribs protesting, and saw Marcus at the window, his face tight. "Cops," he whispered, peering through a crack. "Too many." Before she could stand, the door exploded inward, wood splintering, flashlights blinding her. Officers swarmed, guns drawn, their shouts overlapping. "Hands up!" Nia froze, her pipe across the room, useless. Marcus spun, his hands raised, but his eyes flickered with something off. Guilt, maybe. Officer Shane Carver stormed in, his bandaged hand gripping a pistol, his sunburned neck flushed with rage. "Told you we'd find her," he snarled. Nia's gut twisted. "Marcus," she rasped, searching his face. He looked away, jaw tight, and Carver laughed, a guttural sound. Sold you out for 10 grand. Hargrove's generous. The betrayal hit harder than the shiv, her breath catching. As cops grabbed her arms, yanking her up. Her stitches tore, blood seeping anew, but she didn't scream. Marcus muttered, "Sorry," his voice hollow, but she didn't look at him. Carver shoved a tear gas canister through the window, the room filling with choking fog. Nia coughed, her lungs burning, as they dragged her toward the exit. She twisted, diving for the floor, glass from the shattered window shredding her arms. As she rolled, she hit the pavement outside, the gas stinging her eyes, her arms bleeding rivers onto the asphalt. Bullets whizzed past, pinging off the warehouse wall, Carver's pistol barking as he fired. "She's running," he yelled, his voice thick with hate. Nia scrambled up, her leg buckling, and bolted into the night, the safe house swallowed by smoke behind her. Sirens wailed, cop cars screeching around corners, but she ducked into a dumpster alley, her breath ragged. Hargrove's voice crackled over a megaphone blocks away. "No mercy for traitors. She's a dead woman." Her comms were silent. Her team still blocked, but the recorder's proof was live, viral now thanks to Marcus before he'd stabbed her in the back. She pressed against the dumpster, glass embedded in her forearms, blood dripping onto her shoes. The betrayal stung deeper than the wounds, Marcus's face flashing in her mind. His pins, his promises, all lies. Hargrove had turned her ally into a weapon, his reach suffocating. She'd trusted, and it nearly killed her. But the video was out, the city boiling, and she wasn't done. She ripped a strip from her sleeve, tying it around her arm, her resolve hardening. Hargrove thought he'd won again, thought he'd crushed her spirit. He was wrong. The war was just heating up. How sick is it that Marcus flipped on Nia for a paycheck from Hargrove? Drop a comment with number 1 if you think trust is dead when even allies sell you out. Then hit that like button and subscribe to see if Nia gets payback. What would you do if your last hope turned traitor mid-fight? Picture Nia's shoes, bloodied. Betrayed, still running. Would you forgive or hunt him down? Slam that subscribe bell for the next blow. Now brace yourself. What's Hargrove cooking up that could make Nia's viral proof a death sentence in plain sight? Nia Jackson limped through Atlanta's alleys, her arms shredded from the glass of Marcus Tate's betrayed safe house, blood dripping onto the cracked pavement. Her ribs ached from the shiv wound, the stitches torn open, while her grazed leg throbbed with every step. The city pulsed with rage, the viral video of Officer Dale Pruitt planting cocaine on her sparking protests that lit the night with chants and fire. Crowds clashed with cops on Peachtree Street, Molotov cocktails shattering against riot shields, the air thick with tear gas and fury. Nia's proof had hit the world, trending on every platform, but Judge Victor Hargrove wasn't buckling. He was doubling down, turning her fight into his theater. She ducked behind a burned-out car, her breath shallow, the rusted pipe from the barbershop fight still clutched in her hand. Her blazer hung in tatters, soaked with blood and sweat, but her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the chaos. Helicopters thumped overhead, their spotlights sweeping the streets, while Hargrove's voice blared from megaphones. "She's a terrorist. No mercy." The manhunt had morphed into something uglier, a citywide call to arms fueled by his lies. Nia's comms were dead, her team blocked, but the protests gave her cover. She slipped through a side street, aiming for a drainage ditch, when tires screeched behind her. Her cop van skidded to a stop, doors flying open and officers swarmed, batons raised. She swung the pipe, cracking a helmet, but a baton slammed her shoulder, the same spot Pruitt had hit, pain exploding like a grenade. She stumbled, another blow, catching her ribs, blood flooding her mouth as she hit the ground. Boots pinned her, cuffs snapping tight, and Officer Shane Carver loomed above, his sunburned neck flushed, his bandaged hand twitching. "Gotcha," he sneered, yanking her up by the hair. Her vision blurred, but she spat blood in his face, earning a fist to her jaw. The cops dragged her, beaten and bruised, into the van, the doors slamming shut as the crowd's roars faded. She slumped against the wall, her body a map of pain, but her mind raced. This wasn't random. Hargrove had a plan. The van rolled to the courthouse square, a wide plaza ringed by white columns and floodlights, now a stage for Hargrove's vengeance. News choppers circled, cameras beaming live to millions, the feed splashed across every screen in Atlanta. Cops hauled Nia out, her legs buckling, blood streaking her face as they dragged her to the center. A noose dangled from a makeshift gallows, rough hemp swaying in the breeze. A relic of hate Hargrove had dusted off for the show. Vigilantes packed the square, their Confederate flags waving, shotguns gleaming, their cheers a wall of sound. "Hang!" "Huh?" a woman screamed, her voice shrill, her face twisted with glee. Nia's stomach churned. The racism raw and unfiltered, a mob fed by Hargrove's lies. Carver shoved her forward, his pistol jamming into her spine, while Pruitt flanked her, his buzz cut slick with sweat, his cheek still scarred from her nails. "Time to confess," Carver growled, his tobacco breath hot against her ear. The cameras zoomed in, the feed cutting to Hargrove, pristine in his black suit, stepping onto a platform. His silver hair glinted, his gray eyes cold as he raised a mic. "Nia Jackson, cop killer, terrorist, caught at last. She'll admit her. Crimes before justice is served." The crowd roared, fists pumping, the noose swaying like a promise. Nia's cuffs bit her wrists, but she felt a lockpick tucked in her sleeve, a trick from her CIA days, slipped there before the gas station. "Stop." She worked it free, her fingers slick with blood, her breath steady despite the chaos. The crowd's chants grew louder. "Confess, confess," as Hargrove nodded to Carver. The cop grabbed her arm, twisting it, forcing her to her knees. "Say it," he hissed, his pistol pressing her temple. Nia's jaw clenched, pain searing her ribs, but she smiled, slow and dangerous. "You first," she whispered, the lockpick clicking, the cuffs open. In a blur, she drove her elbow into Carver's gut, snatching his gun as he doubled over. She spun, slamming the butt into Pruitt's face, his nose crunching, blood spraying as he fell. The crowd gasped, then roared, a mix of shock and fury. Nia bolted, the gun in hand, her leg dragging as she weaved through the square. Vigilantes lunged, fists swinging, but she fired a warning shot, the cracks splitting the air, scattering them. Hargrove's voice boomed, "Stop her!" But she dove behind a news van, her breath ragged, blood pooling beneath her. The choppers tracked her, lights blinding, and then the sky erupted. Drones swarmed, dozens of them, buzzing like hornets, dropping tear gas canisters that burst in thick clouds. Rubber rounds rained down, pelting the crowd, one grazing Nia's thigh as she rolled for cover. She coughed, eyes streaming, the gas choking her lungs, her ribs a furnace of pain. The square dissolved into chaos, vigilantes screaming, cops firing blindly into the fog. Nia crawled, her hands scraping asphalt, the gun lost in the scramble. Hargrove's platform loomed through the haze, his figure pacing, his mic crackling. "Justice served! She's down!" His voice dripped with triumph, assuming her collapse meant victory. The drones circled, their hum deafening, a trap he'd sprung to bury her live on air. Nia's comms flickered, static cutting through, then a voice. "We're in. Hold on." Her team had breached something, maybe the feed, maybe the city, but she was pinned, choking, bleeding out. She pressed against a curb, her vision fading, the noose still swaying in the distance. Hargrove's gloat echoed, the crowd's cheers, a dull roar through the gas. Nia's fingers dug into the pavement, her body failing, but her will held. She'd broken free, turned his stage into a battlefield, but he'd countered with drones, with terror, with a spectacle that drowned her. Proof. The rubber rounds thudded around her, the gas thickening, her breath a wheeze. She'd survived the trial, the ambush, the manhunt, only to face this, a public execution, masked as justice. But her team was close, their voice a lifeline. She clung to it, her resolve iron, knowing Hargrove's next move would be his boldest yet. Nia Jackson lay sprawled behind the curb in Atlanta's courthouse square, tear gas swirling around her like a shroud, her lungs burning as she coughed up blood. Rubber rounds thudded into the pavement, one grazing her thigh, adding to the map. Of pain etched across her body, shredded arms, torn ribs, a grazed leg from earlier fights. The drones buzzed overhead, Judge Victor Hargrove's brutal encore to her escape from his staged execution, their cameras beaming her collapse to millions. Her blazer hung in rags, soaked with sweat and crimson, but her comms crackled with hope. "We're in," her CIA team whispered. a lifeline through the static. She clung to it, her fingers digging into the asphalt, her vision blurring as the mob's cheers faded into a dull roar. The gas thinned, sirens piercing the haze, and then boots stormed the square. Not Hargrove's cops this time, men in black. Tactical gear, their vests emblazoned with FBI in bold yellow. They moved fast, barking orders, cuffing officers Dale Pruitt and Shane Carver where they sprawled, dazed from Nia's earlier fight back. Pruitt's buzz cut was matted with blood, his nose broken. Carver clutched his bandaged hand, his sunburned neck pale with shock. The agents hauled them into a van, their shouts muffled by slamming doors. Nia's chest tightened, hope flickering. Her team had breached the system, maybe hacked the feed, and the feds were here. She pushed up, her leg trembling, when an agent spotted her. "Nia Jackson," he called, his voice clipped, professional. She nodded, staggering to her feet. Blood dripping onto her shoes. "Yeah, CIA investigations. Check my file." The agent, a tall man with a buzzed head and steady eyes, signaled his team. They surrounded her, not with guns drawn but with purpose. And the choppers above shifted, news anchors stammering on air. "Breaking news. Federal agents have arrested 2 Atlanta officers linked to Nia Jackson's case. She's been cleared." Protests erupted louder, crowds surging past barricades chanting her name. Nia exhaled, her ribs screaming, thinking it was over. Hargrove's drones were grounded, his pawns cuffed. She'd won, or so it seemed. An agent guided her to a black SUV, its engine humming, and she sank into the back seat, her body folding. Into the leather. "Safe house," the agent said, pulling out a med kit. He patched her thigh, the gauze tight against the graze, while another handed her water. She gulped it down, the cold easing her raw throat, her mind racing. The video, Pruitt planting the cocaine, had gone global, her team amplifying it beyond Hargrove's reach. She leaned back, exhaustion pulling at her, when the SUV turned. Off the main road, weaving into a quiet industrial district. Her instincts twitched. "Where are we going?" she asked, voice hoarse. The agent up front didn't answer, his jaw tightening. The vehicle stopped at a nondescript warehouse, its steel doors sliding open, revealing a stark interior. Concrete floors, flickering lights, a metal chair bolted to the ground. Nia's pulse spiked, her hand brushing the empty sleeve where her lockpick had been. The agents grabbed her arms, their grips bruising, and dragged her inside, her leg dragging, blood seeping anew. "What the hell?" she snapped, twisting. But they shoved her into the chair, cuffs snapping around her wrists and ankles. The tall agent stepped back, his face blank, and then Hargrove emerged from the shadows, his black suit pristine, his silver hair glinting. "Surprise," he said, his grey eyes cold, a smirk curling his lips. Nia's stomach dropped, betrayal sinking in. "FBI," she rasped, her voice cutting through the silence. Hargrove chuckled, low and cruel. "Bought and paid for. Local branch answers to me." He nodded to the agents, who pulled a hose from a corner, hooking it to a tank. Water gushed, icy and relentless as they aimed it at her face. She gasped, choking, the torrent slamming her head back, flooding her nose and mouth. Hours blurred into a nightmare, the waterboarding relentless, her ribs a furnace of pain, her shredded arms stinging as the cuffs bit deeper. She coughed blood, her vision spotting, but her mind clung to defiance. Hargrove watched, pacing, his shoes clicking on the concrete. He stopped, crouching close, his sandalwood cologne cutting through the wet stench. "You're nothing now," he said, his voice a blade. "Your team's blocked. Your proof's noise. I own this city." Nia spat water and blood, her eyes locking on his. "Look outside," she croaked, a grin tugging her busted lip. Hargrove frowned, standing, and glanced at a monitor on the wall. The screen flickered, showing protests swelling, rioters smashing cop cars, news feeds crashing. With her video, then static, her team's voice broke through her comms, faint but clear. "We've hacked the FBI servers. His bribe's alive." Hargrove's face paled, his smirk vanishing, his hands clenching into fists. He spun to the agents, barking, "Kill her!" But the tall one hesitated, eyes darting to the monitor. "Sir, it's out. Bank records, calls, everything." Hargrove roared, grabbing a gun from an agent's holster, aiming it at Nia's head. "I'll do it myself." She stared him down, water dripping from her chin, her voice steady. "Too late, Victor. You're done." The agent tackled him, wrestling the gun away, panic spreading through the room. Nia's comms crackled louder. "We're coming, hold on." She slumped, her body failing, but her spirit blazed. Hargrove's federal trap had backfired, her team exposing his corruption. Mid-torture. The warehouse trembled with distant explosions. Atlanta was igniting. How twisted is it that Hargrove bribed the FBI to torture Nia after she was cleared? Drop a comment with number 1 if you think this judge's power grab deserves a reckoning, then smash that like button and subscribe to see him fall. What would you do if the feds you trusted turned on you mid-fight? Imagine Nia's place, waterboarded, cuffed, staring down a gun. Would you break or spit back? Hit that subscribe bell for the next clash. Now picture this. What chaos is brewing outside that could turn Nia's rescue into a war she can't control? Nia Jackson slumped in the metal chair inside the warehouse, her wrists and ankles raw from cuffs, water still dripping from her chin after hours of Hargrove's waterboarding. Blood seeped from her torn ribs, her shredded arms stung with every breath, and her grazed thigh pulsed under the soaked gauze. The FBI agents who'd turned on her stood frozen, their tactical gear glinting under flickering lights, as Judge Victor Hargrove raged, his silver hair wild, his grey eyes blazing. Her team's hack had just gone live, exposing his bribes to the feds, bank records splashing across every screen in Atlanta. The monitor on the wall flickered with chaos, protests erupting, cop cars burning, the city igniting under the weight of her truth. The warehouse trembled, distant explosions rattling, the concrete, and then the doors burst open. Rioters flooded in, their faces masked, their fists clutching pipes and bricks. "Justice for Nia!" a woman screamed, her voice cutting through the din as she smashed a chair against an agent's helmet. The feds fired, bullets cracking the air, but the crowd surged, overwhelming them. Nia twisted in her cuffs, her ribs screaming, and kicked the chair's bolt loose, tumbling free as a rioter, a wiry kid with a bandana, slashed her restraints with a knife. "Go!" he yelled, shoving a dead agent's pistol into her hand. She staggered up, blood pooling beneath her, the gun heavy in her grip. The room spun, smoke curling from a Molotov cocktail shattering against the wall, flames licking the ceiling. Hargrove bolted, his black suit vanishing into the chaos, his agents scattering as rioters pummeled them. Nia limped through the melee, her leg dragging, her comms crackling faintly. "We're pinned," her team hissed, their voices lost in static. She stumbled outside, the night air thick with ash, Atlanta's skyline a haze of orange and black. Crowds clashed blocks away, chants echoing, "No more lies!" She needed leverage, needed to end this. A burning precinct loomed ahead, its windows shattered, cops fleeing as protesters stormed the doors. She pushed inside, her boots crunching glass, the air hot with smoke and cordite. Officer Dale Pruitt crouched behind a desk, his buzz cut matted with soot, his cheeks scarred from her nails. He spun, pistol raised, but Nia fired first, the bullet grazing his arm, blood spraying as he dropped the gun. "You're done," she rasped, shoving him against the wall, her own pistol jamming into his throat. His eyes widened, fear replacing his usual scowl. "Hargrove's gone, I don't know where," he stammered, his voice cracking. Nia grabbed a phone from his pocket, hitting record, her voice steady despite the pain. "Confess. Now." Pruitt swallowed, sweat beading on his forehead, the precinct trembling as another explosion rocked the street. Okay. I planted the coke. Hargrove ordered it, said she was trouble, needed to go down." Nia's lips curled, a grim smile, and she streamed it live, her team's hacked feed amplifying his words to the world. "Keep talking," she growled, pressing harder. "The trial, the ambush, all of it." Pruitt's breath hitched, his voice spilling fast. "He rigged the jury, paid Carver and me to shank her, told the feds to finish it. He runs everything." The confession lit up screens, protesters cheering outside, their roars shaking the walls. Nia stepped back, victory close, her hand trembling on the gun. "You're finished," she said, turning to limp out, the feed still rolling, but the air shifted, a shadow flickering on a rooftop across the street. A crack split the night, a sniper's bullet slamming into her shoulder, The same spot, battered, before pain exploding like a wildfire. She fell, the gun skittering away, blood pooling beneath her as more shots rained down. Hargrove's voice crackled over a loudspeaker. "She's a liar! This city's mine!" His private militia had arrived, black-clad figures rappelling from buildings, rifles spitting fire into the crowd. Rubble pinned Nia, a chunk of wall collapsing over her legs, her comms buzzing. "Nia, broadcast, he's next," she fumbled. For the phone. Her fingers slick with blood streaming live again. "Hargrove's militia's here. He's killing us all," she croaked, the feed shaky but clear. Protesters scattered, screams piercing the smoke as militia gunners mowed down anyone in sight. Nia rolled, dragging herself behind a charred desk, her shoulder a furnace, her ribs leaking crimson. The precinct blazed, flames licking the ceiling, and she saw Hargrove's silhouette on a rooftop, barking orders, his suit pristine amid the carnage. He'd torched his own evidence, fleeing, with his empire crumbling. Her team's comms cut through, faint but urgent. "We're pinned down, militias everywhere." Nia's breath wheezed, her vision spotting, the phone slipping from her hand. A chopper roared overhead, its blades slicing the smoke, floodlights blinding her. Not hers, Hargrove's. Bullets stitched the ground around her, concrete splintering, her body failing under the onslaught. She'd forced Pruitt's confession, turned the tide, but Hargrove's counterstrike was a slaughter. His militia, a wall of death. The city burned, her proof drowned in blood, and she was cornered alone, her strength fading. Hargrove's voice echoed, a final taunt. "This ends tonight." She clenched her fists, defiance her last weapon, knowing the fight wasn't over. Nia Jackson lay pinned under rubble in the burning precinct, blood pooling beneath her from the sniper's bullet in her shoulder, her ribs leaking crimson from the reopened shiv wound. Smoke choked the air, flames licking the shattered walls, the roar of Atlanta's riots, a deafening pulse outside. Her grazed leg throbbed, her shredded arms trembled, but her grip on the phone stayed firm, streaming Officer Dale Pruitt's confession, "Live to a world watching Hargrove's empire crack." Judge Victor Hargrove's militia rained bullets from rooftops, their black-clad figures cutting through the chaos, slaughtering protesters in a desperate bid to bury her truth. Her comms buzzed faintly, her team's voice lost in static. "We're pinned." She coughed blood, her vision spotting, when a chopper's roar sliced through the night. The helicopter descended, its blades whipping smoke into a vortex, floodlights, blinding her as it hovered over the precinct's ruins. Not Hargrove's, hers. The CIA logo gleamed on its side, a lifeline cutting through the carnage. Nia's chest heaved, relief flooding her battered body. A rope ladder dropped and a figure rappelled down, her silhouette sharp against the flames. Lena Cole, Nia's deputy, landed with a thud, her dark hair tied back, her tactical vest snug, over a lean frame. "Nia!" she shouted, rushing over, her brown eyes wide with urgency. She kicked Rubble aside, kneeling beside her, hands steady as she checked her wounds. "Hang on, boss. We've got you." Nia nodded, her voice a rasp. "Lena, thank God, get me out." Lena cut the phone's feed, pocketing it, then pulled a med kit from her vest. She injected Nia with a syringe, painkiller Nia assumed, numbing the fire in her shoulder, her ribs easing as the drug kicked in. Lena's fingers worked fast, wrapping gauze around the bullet wound, her touch firm but gentle. "Pruitt's. Confessions everywhere," she said, her voice low, steady. "Hargrove's losing it. We've got agents moving on his bunker." Nia gripped her arm, weak but alive, and handed over the blood-smeared phone. "Keep it safe, it's everything." Lena nodded, helping Nia to her feet, her arms strong around her waist. "Chopper's ready. Let's go." Nia limped to the ladder, her leg dragging, her body a wreck. But Lena's presence steadied her. They climbed, the wind blasting her face, flames swirling below as the precinct crumbled. She collapsed into the chopper's bay, the roar of the blades drowning, the city's chaos, her breath shallow but sure. Lena strapped in beside her, the pilot lifting off, Atlanta shrinking beneath them. Nia's eyes fluttered, exhaustion pulling, but she forced them open, locking on Lena. "Where's the team?" Lena's face tightened, her jaw clenching. "Still." Pinned. Militia's got the streets locked. Nia nodded, trusting her deputy's grit. She'd trained her for this. The chopper banked, soaring over burning rooftops. When Lena leaned close, her voice a whisper over the engines. "You're a legend out there, Nia. This ends him." Nia smiled faintly, her busted lips stinging, when a sharp prick stung her neck. She flinched, her hand flying up, feeling a second syringe in Lena's grip. "What?" she croaked, her vision swimming, her limbs growing heavy. Lena's eyes hardened, a smirk curling her lips. "Hargrove pays better." Nia's heart sank, betrayal cutting deeper than any bullet. Her body slumped, the drug paralyzing her, her tongue thick as she tried to speak. Lena yanked her from the seat, dragging her to the open bay door, the wind howling, the city a blur below. "Sorry, boss," she hissed, shoving Nia out. She fell, air rushing past, her scream trapped in her throat as the chopper vanished above. She crashed into a dumpster, metal buckling under her weight, trash cushioning her fall. Pain exploded through her ribs, her shoulder, her world spinning black. But she clung to consciousness, her breath a wheeze, alive, barely. The alley stank of rot, the dumpster's lid creaking as she rolled out, hitting the pavement hard. Blood pooled beneath her, the drug numbing her body but not her mind. Above, Lena's chopper faded, the phone, her proof, gone with her. Nia's comms were silent, her team blind to this. She crawled, her shredded arms dragging, glass crunching under her palms, until she reached a payphone, its cord dangling. In the shadows, her fingers trembled, smearing blood on the keys, dialing a secure line. "Plan B," she croaked, her voice a thread, then slumped, the phone clattering as her strength gave out. Hargrove's face flickered on a nearby billboard, his voice booming through a newsfeed. Nia Jackson's dead, a terrorist brought to justice. His silver hair gleamed, his gray eyes smug, claiming victory as riots raged below. He'd framed her team as rogues, her death a lie to bury her fight. Nia's breath hitched, rage fueling her fading pulse. Lena's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was Hargrove's ace, a dagger to her heart and her mission, but she'd activated Plan B, her undercover agents, a shadow unit even Lena didn't know. They'd move now, silent and lethal. Hargrove gloated too soon, his empire teetering, but Nia was down, bleeding, her family's safety a question gnawing at her mind. She pressed against the alley wall, her body a wreck, her blazer in tatters. The drug slowed her, but her will burned, a fire Hargrove couldn't douse. Lena's smirk flashed in her memory, her deputy's voice echoing, "Hargrove pays better." The chopper's roar lingered in her ears, a betrayal she'd never seen coming. She'd trusted Lena with her life, her proof, her fight, and now she was alone, hunted, her team framed, her city burning. But Plan B was in motion, her last card, and Hargrove's gloating would cost him. The war wasn't over. It was shifting, and Nia's next stand would be her fiercest yet. Nia Jackson crawled from the dumpster's wreckage, her body a tapestry of pain, blood oozing from her reopened shiv wound, her shoulder pulsing where the sniper's bullet had torn through, her arms shredded by glass, and her grazed leg dragging. Behind her, the alley reeked of rot and gasoline, Atlanta's riots a distant roar, the sky bruised with smoke and flame. Lena Cole's betrayal still burned, her deputy's syringe leaving Nia's limbs heavy, her breath a wheeze as she slumped against the payphone. Her call, Plan B, had activated her undercover CIA unit, a shadow team even Lena didn't know, but time was bleeding out with her strength. She pressed a hand to her ribs, blood seeping through her fingers, her blazer a tattered shroud. Footsteps echoed, sharp and swift, and Nia tensed, her hand fumbling for a shard of glass in the filth. Figures emerged, 3 agents in plain clothes, their faces hard, their guns holstered but ready. "Nia," the leader whispered, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek. "Plan B's live, we've got Hargrove's bunker." She nodded, her voice a rasp. "Move fast, he's got my family." They hauled her up, her legs buckling, blood dripping onto their boots, and half-carried her through the maze of alleys, the city's chaos a shield. Sirens wailed, choppers thumped, but her agents slipped past, shadows in the firelight, their van waiting in a burned-out lot. The drive was a blur. Nia slumped in the back, gauze pressed to her wounds, the painkiller. Lena injected, fading, leaving raw agony in its wake. The bunker loomed on Atlanta's outskirts, a squat concrete fortress ringed by razor wire, Hargrove's last stand. Her agents breached it, silent and lethal, cutting power, smoke grenades popping as they stormed inside. Nia staggered out, leaning on the scarred agent, her vision spotting but her will iron. Gunfire crackled, militia grunts falling, their black gear no match for her team's precision. She pushed forward, blood trailing behind her, until they dragged Hargrove from a steel vault, his silver hair wild, his black suit torn. He knelt in the bunker's heart, a cavernous room lined with screens flashing her face, his propaganda still spinning her as dead. Her agents cuffed him, his grey eyes blazing with hate, but Nia stepped close, her voice cutting through the haze. "I'm CIA Investigations Chief. You're done." She nodded to a laptop, her team pulling files, recordings of his orders. To frame her, bribes to the feds, calls greenlighting the militia slaughter. Evidence piled, a mountain of corruption, and Hargrove's sneer faltered, his hands trembling in the cuffs. "You think this ends me?" he spat, his voice a snarl. "I built this city." Nia swayed, her strength fading, but her gaze held him. "And I'm burning it down." Her agents convened a secret tribunal, a makeshift court in the bunker's gloom, their faces grim as they played the files. Voices echoed, Pruitt confessing the frame-up, Carver admitting the Shiv attack, Hargrove's own words ordering her death. The scarred agent read the verdict, his tone flat. Guilty, conspiracy, corruption, murder. Hargrove roared, lunging at Nia, but an agent slammed him back, his cuffs clanking. "You'll pay," he screamed, spit flecking his lips. "You'll all pay." Nia exhaled, victory close, her body failing, thinking it was over. Then Lena's voice crackled over the intercom, sharp and cold. "I've got your family." Nia froze, her heart lurching, the room tilting. Screens flickered, showing her husband. Jamal and daughter Aisha, bound in a warehouse, duct tape over their mouths, Lena pacing with a gun. Hargrove laughed, a jagged sound, his eyes glinting. "You lose, Jackson. Checkmate." Nia's breath caught, rage surging through her pain. Lena's betrayal had cut deep, but this, her family, was a knife to her soul. "Where?" she rasped, grabbing Hargrove's collar, blood smearing his suit. He grinned, silent, taunting, and she shoved him back, turning to her agents. "Find them, now." She stumbled out, gun drawn from an agent's holster, her team scrambling coordinates from the feed. The scarred agent patched her comms, his voice urgent. "Rigged warehouse 5 miles east, explosives detected." Nia ran, her leg buckling, blood trailing, the night air cold against her skin. Her agents piled into the van, tires screeching. As they raced through Atlanta's burning streets, past rioters and militia clashing, the city a war zone she'd ignited. The warehouse loomed, a rusted shell by the river, its windows dark, a trap waiting to snap shut. She kicked the door open, her gun raised, her body a wreck but her will a blade, explosions rocking the distance as Hargrove's chaos spread. She'd won the bunker, buried Hargrove in his own filth, but Lena held her heart, hostage. The reckoning wasn't over. It was personal now, and Nia's fight was far from done. Nia Jackson stormed into the rusted warehouse by Atlanta's river, her gun trembling in her blood-slick hands, her body a wreckage of pain, ribs oozing from the Shiv wound, shoulder throbbing from the sniper's bullet, arms shredded by glass, leg grazed and dragging. The air stank of oil and damp rot, the darkness broken by flickering emergency lights casting eerie pools on the concrete floor. Her husband, Jamal, and daughter, Aisha, sat bound in the center, duct tape sealing their mouths, their eyes wide, with terror. Lena Cole's betrayal had brought her here, her deputy's voice still echoing from the bunker's intercom. "I've got your family." Nia's breath wheezed, her vision spotting, but her resolve burned like a torch in the night. She swept the shadows, gun raised, her boots crunching debris, when a figure sprawled ahead caught her eye. Lena, crumpled against a crate, her dark hair matted with blood, her tactical vest torn. A bullet hole pierced her chest, her gun limp in her hand, her brown eyes glassy, dead. Nia froze, her pulse hammering, the betrayal twisting into confusion. Lena hadn't just turned. She'd been played too. Footsteps echoed behind her, sharp and deliberate. And Nia spun, her gun trained on Judge Victor Hargrove. He stood in the doorway, his silver hair wild, his black suit smeared with bunker dust, a detonator gleaming in his hand. "Surprise," he sneered, his grey eyes glinting with malice. Nia's stomach lurched, rage surging through her pain. "You killed her," she rasped, nodding at Lena's body, her voice cutting the silence. Hargrove chuckled, a jagged sound. Stepping closer, his shoes clicking on the concrete. "She outlived her use. Thought she'd cash out big, but I don't share victories." He double-crossed Lena, his pawn turned liability, leaving Nia to face him alone. Jamal strained against his ropes, muffled cries escaping the tape, while Aisha whimpered, her small frame shaking. A bomb ticked in the corner, its red digits glowing, 3 minutes, counting down. Nia's grip tightened, her shoulder screaming, blood dripping onto her boots. "You're done, Hargrove," she said, her voice steady despite the haze. "Your bunker's gone, your crimes live. My agents are coming." He laughed, raising the detonator, his thumb hovering over the trigger. "Not fast enough. This ends you, your family, your little revolution." Nia lunged, her grazed leg buckling, and fired, the bullet ripping through his shin. He roared, dropping the detonator, blood spraying as he staggered back. She dove, snatching it mid-fall, her ribs a furnace of agony, and rolled, her fingers fumbling the disarm code, a sequence from her CIA drills. The timer froze at 10 seconds, the beep silencing, the warehouse still. Hargrove snarled, clutching his leg, and charged her, his bulk slamming her against a crate. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her gun skittering across the floor, but she twisted, driving her elbow into his throat. He choked, stumbling, and she grabbed his collar, hurling him toward the edge of a loading platform. The river loomed. Below, black and churning, steel rebar jutting from its banks like jagged teeth. "For Atlanta," she hissed, shoving him hard. He flailed. His scream cut short as he fell, impaling on the rebar with a sickening crunch, blood pooling in the water, his silver hair sinking last. Nia collapsed, her breath a wheeze, and crawled to Jamal and Aisha, tearing their ropes free. With trembling hands, Jamal ripped the tape off, his voice hoarse. "Nia, you're alive," Aisha sobbed, clinging to her, her small arms tight around Nia's neck. "Mommy!" Nia held them, blood smearing their clothes, her body failing but her heart whole. "It's done," she whispered, her busted lip curling into a faint smile. Sirens wailed closer, her agents breaching the warehouse, their shouts a blur as they secured the scene. She slumped, exhaustion claiming her, the fight finally over. The screen fades to a newsroom hours later, the anchor's voice crisp over footage of Hargrove's impaled body pulled from the river. Judge Victor Hargrove, mastermind of Atlanta's corruption, dead after a violent standoff. Nia Jackson, CIA investigations chief, exonerated, her team exposing a nationwide racist cabal linked to his crimes. Clips rolled, Pruitt's confession, Lena's betrayal, hacked FBI files, spreading like wildfire. Protests swelled, not just in Atlanta, but across the country, crowds chanting for justice, tearing down old symbols. Nia's agents stormed precincts, cuffs snapping on cops and officials, her legacy igniting a reckoning beyond the city's ashes. She sat bandaged in a hospital bed, Jamal and Aisha beside her, the TV flickering with her face, not as a terrorist, but a hero. Her blazer was gone, replaced by a gown, her wounds stitched, her breath steady. The war had cost her. Lena's stab, her body's scars, but she'd won more. Hargrove's empire was dust, his racism a spark that burned him out. She wasn't just free, she'd lit a fire that would spread, a revolution born from her blood. The room quieted. Her family safe, and Nia closed her eyes, the weight lifting, her fight redefining justice itself. This story of Nia Jackson unveils raw truths about resilience, betrayal, and the fight against systemic racism. The first lesson is the power of unyielding determination. Nia faced brutal beatings, rigged trials, and even betrayal from her closest. ally, yet she never broke. Her spirit turned pain into purpose, showing that inner strength can topple even the most entrenched corruption. Second, it exposes the depth of institutional rot. Hargrove's control over cops, feds, and media wasn't just personal evil. It was a system built to protect itself, crushing anyone who dared challenge it. Naya's victory proves that exposing such networks, no matter the cost, can spark change. Third, trust is a double-edged sword. Lena's turn from loyal deputy to traitor underscores how racism can twist even those closest to us, a reminder to guard our alliances wisely. Fourth, the story highlights the ripple effect of truth. Nia's proof didn't just save her, it ignited a nationwide reckoning, showing that one voice amplified can dismantle lies. Finally, justice isn't handed out, it's seized. Nia's fight, from courtroom to riverbank, teaches that real change demands sacrifice, courage, and relentless action against oppression. So what's your takeaway? How would you stand if the system turned on you? Drop a comment with your thoughts, hit that like button if Nia's grit inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of justice prevailing. Share this story to fuel the fight against corruption. Thanks for joining this journey. May you find strength to challenge injustice wherever it hides.